Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the massive crystal structure floating in space before him. The alien vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It stretched for miles and glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the crystal itself. The ship was so large that Jake's entire fleet could have fit inside one of its smaller sections. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from the command center on Haven Point Space Station. She had been preparing for this moment for months, ever since Earth received the first message from the Kalari Empire. The message had been simple but direct. The aliens wanted to meet with humanity's leaders to discuss what they called mutual cooperation and protection. The Kalari diplomatic ship moved closer to Haven Point with grace that defied physics. There were no visible engines or thrust systems, yet the massive vessel glided through space like it was swimming through water. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Burke studied the readings from his instruments and shook his head. The energy signatures coming from the alien ship were beyond anything in human technology. High Commander Vexithara materialized on the bridge of her ship in a shimmer of light. She was tall and elegant, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly. Her eyes were large and silver, and her movements had an otherworldly quality. She wore robes that appeared to be made of liquid starlight and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. The first meeting took place in the main conference room of Haven Point. Commander Helen Price led the human delegation while Vexithara brought 3 other Kalari officials. The aliens moved with perfect coordination as if they shared a single mind. When they spoke, their voices had a musical quality that made even simple words sound like poetry. Vexithara began the meeting by displaying a holographic map of their empire. 12 star systems appeared in the air above the conference table, each one marked with dozens of planets under Kalari control. The map rotated slowly, showing trade routes and defensive positions that spanned hundreds of light years. The High Commander explained that the Kalari Empire had been watching humanity for some time. They had observed human expansion into space and decided that Earth showed potential as a member species. She spoke of the benefits that would come with joining their empire, including advanced technology, medical knowledge, and most importantly, protection from the dangers of the galaxy, to demonstrate their technological superiority. The Kalari invited the human delegation to witness a display of their weapons systems. Captain Danny Walsh escorted the group to the observation deck, where they could watch through reinforced windows. Vexithara gave a signal to her ship, and suddenly the space around them lit up with energy beams. The Kalari ship fired plasma cannons that could bend space itself. The beams curved around asteroids and struck targets that should have been impossible to hit. The weapons compressed matter into tiny points before releasing it in explosions that vaporized everything within miles. The display lasted for 20 minutes and left the human observers stunned into silence. Dr. Karen Phillips studied the aliens carefully during the demonstration. She noticed that despite their advanced technology, the Kalari themselves seemed physically weak. They moved slowly and appeared to rely heavily on their equipment for basic functions. Their ship provided artificial gravity and atmosphere that kept them comfortable, but they seemed unable to function without it. After the weapons demonstration, Vexithara returned to the conference room with what she clearly believed was an irresistible offer. The Kalari Empire would accept humanity as a protected species. Earth would contribute its resources and population to the Empire in exchange for technology and safety. The aliens spoke of this arrangement as if it was the greatest gift they could possibly offer. The High Commander explained that many species had been eager to join the Empire once they understood the benefits. She mentioned the Thek, who had given up their homeworld to become the Empire's engineers. The Voreen had surrendered their entire military to serve as soldiers for the Kalari. Each species had found their place within the greater structure of the Empire. Commander Price listened politely to the offer, but did not give an immediate answer. She explained that humanity would need time to consider such an important decision. The human leaders would need to consult with their governments and discuss the implications of joining an alien empire. This response clearly surprised Vexithara, who had expected immediate acceptance. The aliens had assumed that any species would jump at the chance to join their advanced civilization. They could not understand why humans would hesitate when offered such obvious benefits. Vexithara's expression showed confusion and perhaps the first hint of irritation as she realized the negotiations would take longer than expected. Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Martinez worked quietly in the background implementing protocols that had been planned for exactly this scenario. Operation Silent Thunder was designed to hide humanity's true military capabilities, while presenting the appearance of a peaceful but primitive species. The aliens were allowed to see only what humans wanted them to see. The Kalari delegation was shown Earth's small patrol craft and defensive satellites. They observed the space stations and mining operations that represented the visible face of human expansion. What they did not see were the hidden shipyards, the concealed weapons platforms, and the massive fleet that had been built in secret over the past 50 years. Young Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez monitored communications between the alien ships. She noticed that the Kalari spoke among themselves with increasing frustration. They had expected the humans to be grateful for the offer of protection. Instead, they were encountering a species that wanted to negotiate as equals rather than accept the role of junior partners. As the day wore on, it became clear that the first meeting would not produce the quick agreement the aliens had expected. Vexithara announced that her delegation would remain at Haven Point for several more days to allow humanity time to make the correct decision. Her tone suggested that there was only one correct choice and that the Kalari expected humans to eventually see reason, and the alien ships took positions around Earth's solar system in what they called a gesture of friendship. Admiral Carter noted that the positioning would also make excellent attack formations if the negotiations went poorly. The Kalari clearly believed they held all the advantages in this first contact scenario, but they had not yet discovered how wrong they were about humanity's true capabilities. The second day of negotiations began with High Commander Vexithara showing clear signs of impatience. She had expected the humans to spend the night discussing the generous offer and return with acceptance. Instead, Commander Helen Price arrived with more questions and requests for additional information about life within the Kalari. Empire Captain Danny Walsh received orders to escort the alien delegation on a carefully planned tour of human facilities. The route had been designed to show the aliens exactly what Earth's leaders wanted them to see, while avoiding any areas that might reveal humanity's true capabilities. The tour began in the civilian sections of Haven Point, where families lived and worked in the growing space community. The Kalari delegation moved through the residential areas with expressions of mild curiosity mixed with condescension. They observed human children playing games and families sharing meals together. Vexithara commented that such emotional displays were quaint but inefficient. In the Kalari Empire, children were raised in specialized facilities designed to maximize their potential contribution to society. Dr. Karen Phillips accompanied the tour group and carefully observed the aliens' reactions to human culture. When they visited the station's art gallery, the Kalari showed confusion at the paintings and sculptures created by human artists. One alien official asked why humans wasted time creating images that served no practical purpose. Another questioned the logic of preserving individual expression when collective efficiency was clearly superior. The aliens were particularly puzzled when they attended a concert performed by the Haven Point Symphony Orchestra. The music seemed to cause them physical discomfort, and they asked to leave before the performance ended. Vexithara explained that the Kalari had evolved beyond such primitive sensory stimulation. Their entertainment consisted of shared mental experiences that were far more sophisticated than crude sound waves. In the station's library, the delegation encountered something that truly baffled them. Thousands of books lined the shelves containing stories, poems, and philosophical works created by individual humans over centuries. The aliens could not understand why so many different perspectives on life and existence were preserved. In their empire, knowledge was standardized and distributed through neural implants that ensured everyone had access to correct information. Captain Walsh guided the group to the Democratic Council, chambers where representatives from different Earth nations were debating policy decisions. The Kalari watched in amazement as humans argued and disagreed with each other openly. Some representatives spoke passionately for one position, while others defended completely opposite viewpoints. The aliens asked why the humans did not simply accept the decisions of their most intelligent leaders. Vexithara became increasingly frustrated as she tried to explain the obvious benefits of unified leadership. In the Kalari Empire, decisions were made by the High Council, whose superior intellect and access to perfect information ensured optimal outcomes. The idea that common citizens should have input on complex matters struck the aliens as dangerously inefficient and potentially chaotic. During a visit to the medical facilities. Dr. Phillips noticed something important about the alien visitors. Despite their advanced technology, the Kalari appeared to be physically weak and dependent on their equipment. They wore devices that monitored their health constantly and seemed unable to function without artificial support systems. When one alien briefly removed a breathing apparatus, his skin immediately began to turn pale. The tour continued to the engineering sections where human technicians worked on maintaining the station's systems. The aliens observed with growing confusion as they watched humans using tools and solving problems through trial and error. The Kalari relied entirely on automated systems that required no manual intervention. They could not understand why humans would choose to do work that machines could perform more efficiently. Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Martinez continued coordinating Operation Silent Thunder from his hidden command center. The aliens were being shown carefully selected patrol craft and defensive systems that represented only a tiny fraction of humanity's actual military capability. Every ship and weapon platform that might reveal Earth's true strength remained concealed behind advanced stealth technology. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez monitored communications between the alien ships and noticed a disturbing change in tone. The Kalari were beginning to express frustration with humanity's reluctance to accept their offer. Some messages contained references to other species that had required persuasion before joining the Empire. The implications of these communications were becoming increasingly threatening. The cultural exchange reached a critical point when Commander Price presented the aliens with examples of human literature and philosophy. She shared works that explored concepts of individual freedom, personal responsibility, and the right to self-determination. The Kalari listened with growing alarm as they realized that humans actually valued independence and rejected the idea of surrendering control to a superior authority. Vexathara attempted to explain why such thinking was dangerous and primitive. She described civilizations that had clung to outdated concepts of freedom and independence, only to destroy themselves through conflict and chaos. The Kalari Empire offered stability and order that eliminated such problems by placing all decisions in the hands of those most qualified to make them. The High Commander began speaking more directly about the realities of galactic politics. She mentioned that space was dangerous and filled with hostile forces that would destroy unprepared species. The Empire provided protection that isolated worlds could never achieve on their own. Species that refused this protection often found themselves facing threats they could not handle alone. Dr. Phillips made careful notes about the aliens' physical limitations and technological dependencies. She observed that the Kalari had become so reliant on their advanced systems that they seemed incapable of basic survival without artificial assistance. Their evolution had apparently prioritized technological integration over physical capability, leaving them vulnerable in ways they did not seem to recognize. As the day progressed, the aliens became more aggressive in their attempts to convince humanity to accept their offer. They spoke of species that had initially resisted joining the Empire, but eventually came to appreciate the benefits of Kalari protection. The tone of these stories suggested that such appreciation had not always been voluntary. Captain Walsh noticed that the alien ships had subtly changed their positions around the solar system. What had initially appeared to be a peaceful formation was beginning to look more like a blockade. The Kalari were clearly preparing for the possibility that humanity might continue to resist their generous offer of protection and membership in their advanced civilization. The second day ended with both sides becoming increasingly aware that the negotiations were not proceeding as the aliens had expected. The Kalari had assumed that any primitive species would eagerly accept the chance to join their empire. Instead, they were encountering humans who seemed determined to maintain their independence regardless of the obvious benefits of surrendering to superior authority. High Commander Vexathara entered the conference room on the third day with an expression that made it clear her patience had finally run out. She no longer bothered with the polite diplomatic language that had marked the previous meetings. Instead, she stood at the head of the table and delivered what could only be called an ultimatum to the assembled human representatives. The Kalari Empire had offered humanity a place within their advanced civilization, and the humans had responded with delays and questions. Vexathara announced that such behavior was unacceptable and potentially dangerous to galactic stability. She gave Earth's leaders exactly 48 hours to accept the Empire's protection or face the consequences of their foolish resistance. Commander. Helen Price tried to maintain diplomatic calm as she asked what these consequences might involve. Vexithara smiled coldly and explained that the galaxy was filled with dangers that isolated species could not handle alone. Sometimes the Empire was forced to demonstrate these dangers to help stubborn civilizations understand the value of proper protection. Captain Jake Morrison received an emergency communication from Admiral Lisa Carter as soon as the meeting ended. The situation had changed dramatically and not in humanity's favor. Long-range sensors were detecting energy signatures throughout the solar system that had not been there before. The 3 Kalari diplomatic ships had apparently been hiding the presence of a much larger fleet. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Burke worked frantically at his sensor station as more alien ships became visible. What had appeared to be empty space around Earth suddenly revealed 12 additional Kalari warships that had been concealed by advanced cloaking technology. Each vessel was massive and bristled with the same exotic weapon systems that had been demonstrated during the first day's display. The alien fleet moved into strategic positions around Earth's major population centers and orbital installations. They took up formations that would allow them to strike at cities like New York, London, and Tokyo within minutes. Other ships positioned themselves near the moon bases and the industrial facilities that represented humanity's expansion into space. Admiral Carter convened an emergency meeting with Earth's military leaders. As the scope of the threat became clear, the Kalari had not come for peaceful negotiations. They had arrived with enough firepower to devastate human civilization and had only been waiting for diplomacy to fail before revealing their true intentions. Dr. Karen Phillips transmitted her analysis of the alien weaknesses to military command, even as the crisis escalated. Her observations about the Kalari's dependence on their technology and their physical frailty might provide crucial advantages if conflict became unavoidable. She had also identified potential vulnerabilities in their exotic power, systems that could be exploited. Thara made a public broadcast to Earth that was transmitted to every communications device on the planet. She spoke directly to humanity's population and explained that their leaders were making a serious mistake by refusing the Empire's generous offer. The broadcast included footage of other worlds that had learned to appreciate Kalari protection after initial resistance. The High Commander announced that humanity would witness a demonstration of the Empire's commitment to galactic order. In exactly 48 hours, the Kalari fleet would destroy Haven Point Space Station, along with several major Earth cities. This action would help the surviving humans understand why accepting protection was always the wiser choice. Captain Danny Walsh coordinated the evacuation of non-essential personnel from Haven Point as the countdown began. Civilian families and researchers were transferred to transport ships that would carry them to safety on Earth. The military personnel remained at their posts, knowing that the space station would likely become the first target of alien aggression. General Paul Davis emerged from the classified sections of Earth's command structure where he had been working on humanity's most secret military projects. For decades, Earth's governments had been preparing for exactly this scenario by developing weapons and strategies designed to counter technologically superior enemies. The time had finally come to test whether human ingenuity could overcome alien advantages. The general carried authorization codes that would activate defense systems hidden throughout the solar system. These weapons had been disguised as civilian infrastructure or concealed in locations where no enemy would think to look for them. Asteroid mining stations contained railgun batteries, while research facilities housed experimental energy weapons. Colonel Steve Martinez received orders to begin the final phase of Operation Silent Thunder. The deception that had hidden humanity's true military capabilities was about to be replaced by a revelation that would shock the Kalari Empire. Hidden shipyards and concealed weapon platforms prepared to emerge from decades of careful camouflage. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez detected increasing chatter between the alien ships as they coordinated their attack plans. The Kalari were confident that their demonstration would convince any remaining human resistance to collapse. They spoke of choosing targets that would maximize psychological impact while leaving enough infrastructure intact for future exploitation. As the hours passed, the alien countdown continued with mechanical precision. Vexithara appeared periodically on communication channels to remind humanity that they still had time to make the correct decision. Each message carried an implied threat that grew stronger as the deadline approached. The Kalari ships began charging their weapon systems in preparation for the promised demonstration. Energy readings from their exotic plasma cannons reached levels that could indeed vaporize entire city blocks. The aliens made no attempt to hide their preparations, knowing that fear would make their ultimatum more effective. Earth's hidden defense network received final activation orders as the 48-hour deadline entered its last few hours. Weapon systems that had been built in secret and concealed for decades prepared to reveal themselves to an enemy that had no idea they existed. The Kalari believed they were dealing with a primitive species that possessed only basic defensive capabilities. Admiral Carter sent a coded message to fleet commanders throughout the solar system as the final countdown began. Operation Thunderstrike was authorized and ready for immediate execution. The aliens had assumed that humanity would either surrender or be easily defeated by their superior technology. They were about to discover how wrong such assumptions could be. The Kalari fleet took final positions for their attack as the deadline reached its last minutes. Vexithera made one final offer for humanity to accept protection and avoid the coming demonstration. When no response came from Earth's leaders, she gave the order for her ships to begin the bombardment that would teach humanity the price of refusing the Empire's generous offer of civilization and safety. The countdown reached 0, and High Commander Vexithera gave the signal for her fleet to begin the demonstration that would teach humanity the consequences of defying the Kalari Empire. Plasma cannons began charging to full power as the alien ships prepared to destroy Haven Point and several Earth cities. The High Commander smiled with satisfaction as she watched her weapons systems come online. Admiral Lisa Carter waited until the exact moment when the Kalari weapons reached maximum charge before she spoke 3 words that changed everything. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. The signal went out simultaneously to hidden installations throughout the solar system, and what happened next defied everything the aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. Across space, what the Kalari had assumed were asteroids suddenly came to life with brilliant engine flares. Massive shapes that had been drifting in the asteroid belt for years revealed themselves to be camouflaged battleships of enormous size. Derelict space stations that appeared abandoned suddenly opened hidden bays and launched squadrons of heavily armed fighters. Captain Jake Morrison took command of the EDS Leviathan as the massive dreadnought emerged from behind what had appeared to be a dead moon. The ship was over 2 miles long and bristled with weapon systems that represented decades of human military engineering. Rail cannons capable of accelerating projectiles to incredible speeds extended from armored turrets, while missile bays opened to reveal thousands of plasma torpedoes. The Kalari fleet suddenly found itself surrounded by over 40 human battleships that had been hiding in plain sight throughout the solar system. Each vessel had been designed specifically to counter advanced alien technology, using principles that the Kalari had never encountered. Human ships were built for war rather than intimidation, and every system had multiple backups to ensure continued operation under combat conditions. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Burke coordinated the deployment of electromagnetic warfare systems that immediately began disrupting the aliens' exotic sensors. The Kalari had built their technology around elegant energy fields and quantum effects that were incredibly sophisticated, but also vulnerable to the crude electromagnetic interference that human ships generated. Captain Danny Walsh led a squadron, a fast attack craft that emerged from concealed positions near Jupiter's moons. These ships were small and agile compared to the massive battleships, but they carried specialized equipment designed to jam alien communications and target their vulnerable power systems. The human fighters moved with coordination that spoke of years of training for exactly this scenario. High Commander Vexithera stared in shock as her tactical displays filled with human ships that had appeared from nowhere. Her sensors were being disrupted by interference patterns that made it impossible to get accurate readings on the enemy fleet. The elegant Kalari technology that had dominated 12-star systems was being overwhelmed by what appeared to be deliberate chaos. Colonel Steve Martinez revealed the true scope of Operation Silent Thunder as hidden weapon. Platforms throughout the solar system began firing. What the aliens had believed were mining stations and research facilities were actually fortified positions armed with experimental weapons. Particle beam arrays and gravity wave generators opened fire on the Kalari ships from multiple directions. Simultaneously, the human fleet attacked with a coordination that demonstrated years of planning and preparation. Every ship knew its role and executed maneuvers that had been practiced countless times in secret training exercises. The Kalari found themselves facing an enemy that fought with the disciplined fury of a species that had been preparing for this moment for decades. General Paul Davis watched from the command center as human weapon systems performed exactly as designed. Rail cannons fired projectiles that punched through exotic alien armor, while plasma torpedoes overloaded energy shields that had been considered impenetrable. The Kalari ships were beautiful and advanced, but they had not been built to withstand the brutal efficiency of human military.
Engineering, Dr. Karen Phillips' analysis proved
Crucial as human forces targeted the specific vulnerabilities she had identified in alien technology. The Kalari power systems that relied on exotic matter and quantum effects began failing under electromagnetic assault. Ships that had seemed invincible began losing power and drifting helplessly as their elegant technology failed them. The battle was swift and decisive because the humans had been preparing for it. While the aliens had expected easy victory, Kalari ships found their weapon systems disabled by interference patterns that human engineers had specifically designed to counter their technology. The crystalline vessels that had impressed humanity with their beauty proved fragile when faced with kinetic weapons traveling at enormous speeds. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez coordinated communications between human ships as they systematically disabled the alien fleet. The Kalari had built their vessels for intimidation and technological superiority, but humans had built their ships for war. Every human weapon system was designed with one purpose, which was to destroy or disable enemy vessels as quickly and efficiently as possible. Captain Morrison demonstrated the tactical brilliance that had made him one of Earth's finest military commanders as he coordinated the assault on the Kalari flagship. The Leviathan and 3 other dreadnoughts focused their fire on Vexithera's command ship, while smaller vessels prevented the other alien ships from coming to her assistance. The High Commander found herself trapped aboard a crippled vessel as human boarding parties prepared to take control of her ship. The Kalari crew was unable to resist effectively because their physical weakness and dependence on technology made them helpless once their automated systems failed. The elegant aliens who had ruled 12 star systems were defeated by humans who understood that sometimes the most effective solution was also the simplest one. Within 3 hours, the entire Kalari fleet was either destroyed or captured. Not a single human ship had been lost, and casualties were minimal because the aliens had been completely unprepared for the level of resistance they encountered. The species that had dominated multiple star systems had been defeated by what they considered primitive bipeds who relied on crude technology and brute force tactics. Admiral Carter received the final battle reports as the last Kalari ship surrendered. The demonstration that was supposed to teach humanity the value of alien protection had instead revealed that Earth possessed the military capability to defend itself against any threat. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity did not need protection from anyone, because humans were perfectly capable of providing their own security through superior firepower and tactical excellence. High Commander Vexithera found herself aboard the human dreadnought Leviathan, facing Admiral Lisa Carter in person for the first time since the battle ended. The proud alien leader who had arrived at Earth with such confidence now sat in restraints while her entire fleet lay captured or destroyed around the solar system. The demonstration she had planned to teach humanity about power had instead become her own education in military reality. Captain Jake Morrison stood beside the Admiral as they questioned the defeated Kalari commander. Vexithera struggled to understand how her technologically superior empire had been defeated so completely by what she still considered a primitive species. The human weapons had been crude and brutal compared to the elegant Kalari systems, yet they had proven devastatingly effective in actual combat. The interrogation revealed the true scope of human deception during the negotiations. Admiral Carter explained that every patrol ship and defensive satellite the aliens had been shown represented less than 5% of Earth's actual military capability. The hidden shipyards had been producing warships for 50 years while the Kalari believed they were observing a peaceful civilization with minimal defenses. Dr. Karen Phillips presented her analysis of Kalari weaknesses to the captured alien leadership. Their empire's greatest strength had also been its fatal flaw, because over-reliance on advanced technology had made them vulnerable to electromagnetic warfare and kinetic weapons. The aliens had evolved beyond physical capability and lost the ability to adapt. When their sophisticated systems failed them, Captain Danny Walsh reported that similar battles were taking place throughout Kalari space as other species learned about the Empire's defeat at Earth. The news was spreading rapidly through quantum communication networks, and subject worlds were beginning to revolt against their alien overlords. The mighty empire that had ruled 12 star systems was collapsing as its aura of invincibility disappeared. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Burke analyzed the captured Kalari technology and discovered that much of it was actually borrowed or stolen from other species. The aliens had built their empire by conquering civilizations and taking their best innovations while suppressing the original creators. The Kalari themselves had contributed relatively little to the advanced systems they claimed as their own achievements. The revelation explained why the alien empire had been so vulnerable to human tactics. The Kalari had never developed their own military doctrine because they had always relied on overwhelming technological superiority to defeat enemies. When faced with opponents who could counter their stolen technology, they had no backup plans or alternative strategies. General Paul Davis coordinated the liberation of Kalari subject worlds as human fleets moved throughout their former empire. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves free to reclaim their homeworlds and rebuild their civilizations. The Thek engineers and Voran soldiers mentioned during the negotiations were among the first to request human assistance in overthrowing their alien masters. Colonel Steve Martinez established communication networks that allowed the liberated species to coordinate their efforts and share intelligence about Kalari installations. Many of these civilizations possessed advanced technology that had been suppressed by the Empire, and they were eager to use their capabilities against their former oppressors. The speed of the Empire's collapse surprised even the humans who had planned the operation. Within weeks of the battle at Earth, the Kalari had lost control of half their territory. Former subject species were not only declaring independence, but actively hunting down the aliens who had ruled them with such arrogance. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez monitored communications across the galaxy as news of humanity's victory spread to other civilizations. Species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly requesting diplomatic contact with the humans who had defeated the mighty Kalari Empire. The galaxy's power structure was shifting rapidly as everyone sought to understand these new players. Admiral Carter received delegations from dozens of alien civilizations who wanted to establish formal relations with Earth. Unlike the Kalari, these species approached humanity with respect and genuine interest in mutual cooperation. They had learned from the Empire's mistake and understood that humans preferred partnership to domination. The captured Kalari leadership was given a choice between execution for their crimes against other species or exile to a remote world where they could live without their advanced technology. Most chose exile because they could not conceive of existence without their sophisticated systems. The few who remained were assigned to help rebuild the civilizations their empire had destroyed. Dr. Phillips established research programs that combined human engineering with alien technology recovered from the Kalari ships. The goal was not to copy their systems, but to understand the principles behind them and develop new innovations that incorporated the best of both approaches. Human creativity merged with alien knowledge promised rapid advances in multiple fields. Captain Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's expanding fleet as humanity took on the role of galactic peacekeeper. The same military capability that had defeated the Kalari Empire was now used to protect smaller civilizations from other threats and maintain stability in regions where the Empire's collapse had created power vacuums. The liberated species formed a new alliance with Earth at its center based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Each member civilization contributed their unique strengths while maintaining their independence and cultural identity. The alliance grew rapidly as more species chose partnership with humans over the chaos that followed the Empire's destruction. Vexithera spent her final days on Earth writing a report for any surviving Kalari who might encounter humanity in the future. She warned that humans were unlike any species the Empire had previously conquered because they combined advanced technology with the warrior spirit that the Kalari had lost generations ago. Her report concluded that any future contact with Earth should be based on respect and equality rather than attempted domination, Admiral Carter recorded. The final entry in her command log as Earth's transformation from isolated world to galactic power became complete. The Kalari had tried to impress humanity with their beautiful ships and advanced technology, but it was human. Battleships built for war rather than show that it ultimately stolen the spotlight and changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The galaxy now understood that Earth did not need anyone's protection because humans were fully capable of protecting themselves and anyone else who chose to stand with them. The age of the Kalari Empire was over and the era of human leadership had begun with the understanding that true strength came not from elegant technology but from the determination to use whatever tools were necessary to defend freedom and independence against those who would take them away.